Students, this is a webcast for those of you who are not live in person in the classroom. So I just want to talk you through the next set of notes. We're getting into medical terminology, which is the second part of the introduction to sports medicine. If you're taking anatomy and physiology, there's going to be some overlap here, but just understand that in sports medicine, especially in sports medicine 1, we're really looking at a lot of anatomy, the location of structures, and there's a whole lot of terminology that you'll have to understand to really understand the anatomy part of ligaments and bones and joints. There's just a lot to understand there. So this is a really important unit. So you can see by looking at this slide, this is the objectives. This is, by the way, all of our PowerPoints come from Weber State University. So I don't make them, I just edit them sometimes or whatever, but these are kind of the objectives here. And we're not going to go through all of this in this lesson. We're just going to focus on the first objective, being able to identify and utilize anatomical positions and planes and directional terms. But we're really just going to focus on the first 2 bullet points here in this lesson, and then I'll come back and do another lesson on the directional terms. So we'll come back to that. We'll skip this slide. This is kind of an overview though of all the stuff that we have to know. So we're going to be learning all of this stuff, but it'll take about 2.5 to 3 weeks for us to learn it all. So we'll go slow enough that we'll get it. A little history here. This is a little history on, I'm not going to play this video, but you're welcome to play it if you want to open the PowerPoint up. A little background on just medicine in general. So kind of really got started, medicine and the practice of medicine, real medicine, really got started more so in the Renaissance period. That's when medicine began to really take off as communication and information was being more easily shared between communities and villages. And scientists, doctors, and artists, they would experiment on the dead, or sometimes, unfortunately, the incarcerated. And the most violent offenders that were locked up in jail, sometimes they would experiment on them. But that's kind of how they learned all of the structures of the body, by dissecting dead people mostly. They took the cadavers, which were the dead bodies, and they would position them flat on their backs. And it gave kind of a reference point for everyone to have the same reference point when talking about a structure in the body and its relationship to another structure in the body. So a reference point is really important. We'll talk about that in a second. You have artists that are involved, such as Leonardo da Vinci and other artists. They started to draw the human body and all of the structures. So maybe as they were dissecting, you might have like an artist that would have to really do a good job to artistically draw the body part, the organ, and then they were able to kind of from there create documents and books that they could get out to other communities to help people learn. So that brings us to the anatomical position. And it's really important when you're talking about a body part that you're talking about the body part from the aspect of the anatomical position. And this is it. You can see it modeled here with this girl standing here. It's standing up, palms and feet facing forward. I don't know how you could face your feet backwards, but palms really are important. And you might not think it, but when you go to talk about bones in the wrist, it would matter which way your hand was facing, up or down. So it's from this position that this is the anatomical position. Okay, so all of the body parts, movements in the body, everything is from this position. If you were in the classroom right now, I would have you stand up and model the anatomical position. So if wherever you are listening to this, you might like to just pause it and then stand up and then make a note to yourself. This is the anatomical position. Okay, the next thing you want to do is get into the anatomical planes of the body. Also really important when talking about movement and the way that a joint moves, the motion that it goes through, what plane of the body does it go through. And most often, and maybe more commonly in a real life practical way, is MRIs. If you get an MRI, a medical image that you have to get into a little tube and it makes lots of noise. We'll see some pictures here in a second. There's different planes of the body that the pictures are taken from. So you get different looks, like whether you're looking at the top down or you're looking at it from the side. So these are the planes of the body that we're going to look at here. And again, there's another video that if you want to go and open up this actual PowerPoint, you can click on and watch if you want to get more information. So these planes are fixed lines of reference along which the body is often divided or sectioned to facilitate viewing of its structures. It also allows one to obtain a three-dimensional perspective by studying the body from different views. So I kind of just mentioned that. So here they are. Okay, and then we'll go through them. So the first plane that is worth mentioning is the sagittal plane. And the sagittal plane divides the body into right and left portions. Now, you can have a sagittal plane that is mid-sagittal or median, and that divides the body into equal right and left halves. You can see the median sagittal plane here is dividing this person in half equally. But if you're talking about often what we say is a parasagittal plane, this is a plane, it's the same plane, but if you move it over, say move this whole plane over and we're going to look at the shoulder, it's still going to divide right and left, but we call it parasagittal because it's not directly in the middle. If you look, this person's laying down like the cadaver we just mentioned, and if you took sections along the sagittal plane from the side, this is what you would see. And this is an actual MRI image of a head that is taken in the sagittal plane. So they just took an image of this person's head here, and you can see the side view is what you get to see with that. Okay, so that's the sagittal plane. All right, the frontal plane also goes by the name coronal plane. Coronal means crown. So when you think about a king who wears a crown and puts the crown on his head, if you take a piece of paper and pretend it's your crown, take that piece of paper and put it up on top of your head like you're putting on a crown, and then this would be the coronal or the frontal plane. So it's like this, coming straight down on top of the person's head. And it's going to divide the body into front and back sections. Okay, so, and you can see here, this is a laying down person, but this is a coronal or frontal section, and this is the kind of view you would get of that body. This is an MRI image in a coronal or frontal plane. So you're looking like maybe at the back of this person's head, but through the head. So that is the frontal or coronal plane, divides the body into front and back portions. And again, I would encourage you to pause the video, maybe even like take a piece of paper or a notebook or something, and then just like kind of touch your head with it, make a coronal plane, and think about how that would divide your body into front and back. Okay, and then there's a transverse plane. And the transverse plane is also called the horizontal plane, but this cuts the body into top and bottom sections. Transverse cut here down at the bottom, this person laying here, gives kind of an interesting section. It's like also called a cross section. Maybe I heard a cross section. And then you can see this transverse plane view here of the head, where it's come across up here at the top, right at this person's eyes and nose. That's where the section is that you're viewing from. So you can see here, this is the person's eyes, this is the person's nose, this is the brain that you can see that has been sectioned out. So that's an MRI image that is in a transverse plane. Okay, and I think that is pretty much it. I'll just go back a slide here. Again, if you would like to watch more on this, there is a link here. I'm not going to play it within this video, have a video within a video, but you could look at this. I'm going to show it in the class, so it might not be a bad thing to watch, about planes. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, and now you can work on the activities that follow.